Okay, friends, again, this is Eliyahu, and it's a lot of fun and very enlightening to be here with Jeff Goldstein. And I understand now Jeff has a particularly amazing story, which I'm very keen to hear.
Okay. Well, this actually is a near-death experience that I had. I was in my early 20s, and I was going down a river with some friends. We had gotten into a canoe, and no, it was I think a canoe, and they only had 2 or 3 life jackets, and I didn't have one. And I said, well, I can swim, and I went with my friends down the river. Well, we came down this river, and all of a sudden the river went. I'll do it so the camera can see like this, like a whoosh. So it was like the river was coming, and it went down, and it made this whirlpool in the bottom. And so we went down there, and the boat turned over, and I got caught in this whirlpool of water.
Whoa.
And I started to drown. I was struggling. I started to drown. And all of a sudden, I yelled for help. I just said I was just in trouble. And all of a sudden, my spirit said to me, let go. And actually, it was more than my spirit. I saw a vision of, at the time I was learning at a spiritual school called Emissaries of Divine Light, and the teacher who had already passed away was called Lloyd Meeker, or Yolanda. And Yolanda actually came to me in this vision and said, let go. And all of a sudden I let go. The next thing I knew, I was on the shore of there was like a sandy shore to the river. And I knew that I had touched upon being very close to death, and I knew that I touched upon the spirit world. And from that point on, I began to ask people about the spirit world, and said, listen, this being came to me. I saw him. Anyway, that's the story in the short version.
Okay. Tell me about him.
Who, Lloyd Meeker? Well, Lloyd Meeker was a mystic from America, and he had he was like an energy healer and a mystic, and he had a group around him called the Emissaries of Divine Light. He started out like discovering his own path, and then one night he did what he calls automatic writing. I think it was 3 nights in a row he did it, then it never happened to him again. And he just started writing, Spirit started writing through his hand. And then he started talking to people, and then he learned how to help people through what we call now energy healing. And he created a method that I use called attunement, which works with the nervous system and the endocrine system.
We're talking what, the 1930s here?
We're talking about 1930s, 1940s. He had 1932 is when he had his automatic experience writing. This was in Colorado, in America. And he was a great mystic, and he grew a great group of people around. The Emissaries of Divine Light was teaching people how to be servers of light, how to help and bring light into the world. And the group still exists. He passed away in a plane crash in 1950s, 1954, I think. And
of course, the soul always decides when to leave. There's no such thing as an accident. Is that the only time you saw him?
No, he came many times to me. He still can come to me. So,
oh, really?
So sometimes he comes and visits every once in a while.
What does he say to you?
Oof, what does he say to me? Let's say. He doesn't really say so much. It's just presence.
What does he impart to you when he comes?
He imparts that this ethic of serving light and bringing light, and he gives me encouragement that there's a network of light workers or team outside of the human beings that are assisting us, the assistance to humanity that's assisting humanity to become come into the light.
Oh, wow.
And so it's part of a team. He's part of a team of that. So like when I touch into him, I feel that team, and I feel my own spirit. And usually it's just encouragement. I never really ask for words. If words come, it's words of spiritual encouragement usually. I never ask questions of him or any other spirits.
I've heard that a lot from people.
There's just no need to. It's just the presence. Like when a spirit comes, it's the presence, and I remember that I'm spirit, and that's all. It's like sometimes we forget that we're spiritual beings, and the assistants, they come and remind us. But there's also, thank goodness, human beings on earth like yourself, and many people that come here, and many healers around the world, many people that are showing people that spirit is alive in their body. And that's what we need, is to be spiritually alive.
And to be connected with to try to connect and to be grateful for our guides and teachers, because we are always helped. And as many have said, we are never alone, we're always helped. And it sounds to me that you have a very, very powerful, beautiful guide and teacher. And okay.
So just about this story that I was telling you, when I had this near-death experience, I could really feel that there was something else that was happening, not at the physical level. I really got pulled into the spiritual world, and that was one of the things, because I was already learning about the spiritual world, was one of the things that opened a part of me that's never closed.
Easy, Yofi. How great. Thank you, Jeff.
Well, Eliyahu, I was thinking about another story that relates to the physical body, in a sense. One time I was in Nevada, and I hiked up onto a mountain. And when I went through I met some people, and they said, oh, some people got lost up here, and they had to come and take them out in helicopters. And I like to hike alone, and I said, well, I'll be okay. So I started hiking.
That's the ethos of an athlete, which sometimes could be very, maybe stupid. Okay.
So anyway.
No, that's it. No, that's when you lose.
Anyway, I like to hike alone, so I went up.
Okay.
And it was a beautiful place. It was very strong winds, and the trees were, like pine trees, were very old, but they were very short. They weren't very tall, but they were very old. They had thick trunks because of the wind. They couldn't grow much, but there was like a little forest of them there. And anyway, I got to a certain place where I was trying to go around, and I got up and I said, oh, look, there's a trail. I can walk down around this way. So I go down on this rock, and then I kind of come around the side, and all of a sudden I come to a place, and I realize I can't go any further, and there's a little space to play, and I look down, and it's a sheer drop, like really, really far, like, you know, and all of a sudden I was like, it didn't have much space, and my body started to shake. And I got afraid, and well, first I got afraid. I said, what am I into? What happened? And then all of a sudden the fear came up. And I found a place, I guess, to be. And I just waited, and I just waited there. And I waited, and I waited, and I waited until my shaking left me. And I started to say, I'll be okay. And I looked around, and I said, well, I came from that path, so I can go up that path. And that's what I did. And it took me, because it was right on a sheer cliff, and I didn't realize what I was getting into, because it was like, anyway, I went up that path, and when I got to the top of this hill, I just put myself on the hill and kissed the ground and just said, whoa, I'm not doing this again. And it was quite a fascinating experience.
Okay, so what's the lesson here, aside from humility, maybe, and knowing our limitations? Overcoming fear. Because
what happened was I was very afraid, and I had to, and I couldn't change my reality. I was just afraid in that circumstance. So I had to change the way fear was working in my body. I had to overcome the fear. I had to transform the fear into power, in a sense, so that I had power and strength and wisdom in order to get myself out of the circumstance. So the fear, like, and the shaking and everything, it brought up the adrenaline, it brought up the nervous system. I was all ready. I was just like, but I couldn't do anything. Like, I was ready to get out of the circumstance, I couldn't do anything, so my body shook.
Well, thank God that you were able to find your balance. You know, it reminds me of a story of our friend and teacher, Gene White Eagle, Gene and John Parison. And it's a true story. They were teaching in Hawaii, and they had taught their class that morning about how when you're really afraid or sick or whatever it is, to sing the song of your fear, to express it in spontaneous song, and then after doing that for a while, when you feel it's enough, to let the song of your soul answer back in return, and then sing the song of your soul or your higher self. And one of her students, who had just learned that morning, it was in Hawaii, and she went for a swim, and she was being pulled out further and further to sea on a rip tide, and it was such a strong current that she couldn't stop herself from getting further and further away from the land, and she started either thinking or somehow singing, as she was being pulled out, the song of her fear. And then after a while, she had just that morning been at the lesson. She started, after a while, the song of her soul started coming through. The power song, the song of her true identity, and that started just coming through her so strong, and she started feeling stronger and stronger and stronger, and she found a way to get herself out of that riptide, and she was able, her body filled with power, and she was able to swim back. And that reminds me of your story. So, okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's very strong. You know, sometimes when we're in emergency circumstances, it depends, what do we do with that fear? What do we do with that fear that comes up? And how do we transform it? It's not always simple, but it's very possible to do. And sometimes we have to practice in the simple fears, driving a car, walking down the street if someone cuts you off something. In the simple things, to practice overcoming the fear so that we can use our stronger spiritual power to assist us and other powers. You know, yesterday there was a fire in Jerusalem, and it was a pretty big fire, and there were...
Right where you live, the Jerusalem forest.
Right where I live in the Jerusalem forest, the smoke was pouring over our house, and I watched from beginning to end, and watched airplanes, and I watched amazing firefighters. I tell you, I think the firefighters did a very good job. But it brought me to mind about me fighting a fire by myself in the Jerusalem forest when I first came here. I was taking a walk, and all of a sudden I saw a small fire spreading through the trees, through the underbrush of the trees. And I had helped put out fires before, had the experience before, and I started to, with my feet, stamp out the flames, and then
Wait,
I got a stick.
Did you have a blanket or something?
No. And I had a stick, and I started putting out the flames. Now at this time I didn't have a telephone, so I couldn't call for help. I was kind of in the middle of the forest. There was nowhere to go, and the fire was getting bigger.
It seems completely dangerous what you just said.
Oh yeah. Well, what happened is that no, I was okay. I wasn't in a place of danger. The fire was small. It was on the ground. It wasn't a big fire flying
Yeah,
out
but
like
if there's dry foliage all around, then that
yes, but it's
that
dry
could
foliage.
explode.
It's low on the ground. It's not. I wasn't in a real danger, physical danger circumstance. Otherwise, I wouldn't have done it.
Okay.
Okay.
I guess you're right.
It was a brush fire. It was a brush fire, but in the midst of the trees, but it was low. If it got too big, obviously I would have gone. But what happened was, as I started to work and my adrenaline started pumping,
Yes.
and all of a sudden I got into this place of power as I was running around for 1, 2, maybe more hours. I was just going around, putting out the fire. From all of a sudden I'd put it out in one area and then I'd see it pop up somewhere else. And I'd run over to here, because it's all on terraces, you see? You're up and down. And I would go over with my little stick and my shoes, which I ruined, but I put out the fire. And
I would think hitting it with a stick would just stir up the fire. I could understand maybe stomping.
no, but it puts out the flames.
Was it a
And then you
rock?
take a stick and also you push around the coals so that.
What do you mean the coals? The earth?
So what happens is, okay, so you have like earth over here, okay, and you have like a fire burning towards it. So if it's a small fire, the fire's like this big, okay, so you either can stamp it out or push it out, and then with the stick you push the coals back into the other coals so that there's a barrier, so that the fire can't jump over into the healthy brush.
Oh,
again.
okay.
In other words, so you can knock it out like this, and it puts out the flame, and then you kind of push it back.
Okay.
And I mean, and I had some other tricks. I don't even remember what they were. But it was the reason I tell you the story is because it was adrenaline, powerful adrenaline. For 2 hours, I was just going and doing. I mean, I just had to do it. I thought no one to call, no one else to help me. There was no one around, and I'm just putting out this fire. And when I succeeded, it was like, because you're on this big high, and all of a sudden, but it left me with a feeling that I could do anything. Like, in other words, got a feeling that, okay, I put out this fire, I can do just about anything. And so that was the gift that the fire gave to me, the experience gave to me, this story gave me a gift, and it brought out my inner power.
Which has affected you all your life.
Right, yes. I mean, it's affected me in different ways all my life, and this particular time it affected me in a very strong way. I mean, it kind of told me, I was fairly new in Israel, that okay, you can handle it here. It's not easy in Israel, which is another story in itself.
Well, again, that's a matter of painting. You know, I mean, we are the painters. I worked with a healer, a wonderful guy named Yadin. He told me an amazing story. He was young. He was like a new recruit in the Israeli army, the IDF, and you know, he's small of stature. Now he's wiry and he's muscular. I don't know how he was then, but he was in a very tough unit, a very maybe one of the best units as for fighting men. Okay, and he says it was basically terrible. The training was terrible. You know, in this type of thing, you get pushed around and bullied by your commanding officer, and if you're not up to the strength-wise and endurance-wise, they really ride you. They really give you a hard time, and I think any army, and also here. So he was telling me it was basically like hell, and they gave him this huge pack. All of the guys in the unit, they had to run up quite a high hill with a very heavy pack. And he said to me that he was the weakest one, and he just couldn't manage it. And they were screaming in his ear and abusing him because he couldn't do it. So after a while, he just prayed to God, and he had no belief in God, especially before then. No connection or belief in God, but in his desperation, he started pleading to God silently for his leg to break. Because if his leg would break, then he would be out of hell. And he was pleading and begging. And he says, all of a sudden, he got this huge wave of energy come over him. And he was able to start running up the hill really, really fast. He was way behind. He was way behind everyone else. This wave comes over him, and he starts passing everybody. And he gets such power that he's even helping somebody who was about to fall and collapse. And so he helps this person who was at the end of his rope, and they both, under his power, they get to the top of the hill. He said to me, from that day, he switched from being the weakest guy in the unit to being the strongest guy in the unit. And so something happened to him. And then it awakened his spiritual curiosity as well, because he went on to travel the world and to learn from masters and healers all over the world. And he was working on me, and he's a great healer. And it's just an amazing story, one that I'll never forget. So there is this power, this divine force, which can help us sometimes and change our lives.
Well, I think that that divine force is inside of us. When your friend, when he called upon himself, or I think what it is, he triggered in his consciousness, in his very being, he triggered his adrenal glands, his adrenal system. But it came from the inside of the brain. The brain made a switch that you have the power. You don't need to break your leg. You have the power, do it. And something changed inside of the brain, and all of a sudden the brain was able to put out enough energy, because there's something that blocks us from having enough adrenaline. In my story, it was like I didn't have a choice. The adrenaline just pumped. But sometimes there's blockages, and where we start to say, oh no, I can't do it, I'm weak. Oh no, I'm going to be exhausted, I have to do this, or I don't want to burn my shoes, or in this person's case, whatever it is, like he had, who knows what type of excuses he had. But all of a sudden, those excuses burnt in the light. And that's, when they burn in the light, then there's a message from Spirit that says, you can do anything. And
it's a spiritual thing, first of all, and then, of course, the biology that you explained, I'm sure it's true. But first and foremost, it's this spiritual ordination, or I don't know what you would call it, but it's amazing.
Yeah, because his spirit spoke to his body, and his body listened. And when our body listens to our spirit, well, amazing things happen. Our spirit knows exactly what to do. But one of the problems with human beings, I think, is that we don't listen to our spirit accurately enough. We're listening, the spirit is there, but we're not really, not just listening, but kind of working with spirit. If you want to use the word strong, we're obeying the spirit. And when we get to that place, then spirit, this is who we are really. The spirit is who we are. And when
it takes the blessing of crisis, though. Very often it takes a crisis to. It won't come in any other way. The crisis brings it out, and it's like
the crisis brings it out because it's the core of what they call the fight and flight syndrome. That's at the core. It's built into us to protect ourselves, to survive. It's built in deep inside of us to survive. We have a very strong survival instinct inside of ourselves, and that's what you have to tap upon.
Okay.
I'll speak.